Okay, thank you, Magali, for giving me the floor. And my name is Nzie, and I'll be
Recording in progress.
I will be co-moderating this session with Suun from Zambia. I think she's on the line, and she's having a little bit difficulty to speak. When she will be set very well, she will join us, and she can also speak. So just to verify, can you hear me very well?
Yes, amazingly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So today we are having the online safety SIG webinar on the theme online safety and law. They don't tell you that really matters. So it is a 90-minute session with 4 panelists, very experienced in the field. They are going to feed us, and also participants are going to ask questions probably. And we'll call everybody to ask your question using the chat if you have, and also when the appropriate time will be set, you can also request the floor. We are asking everybody to mute their microphone when they are not speaking. Before we start, we would like to do a group photo. So Magali, maybe if anybody, those who are available, you can just on their camera so that you can quickly take a group photo before we start. Magali?
Yes, I'm there.
Yes, just the technical guy, they can just tell us when they are done. So everybody, if you can on your camera so that you can quickly take a group photo before we move on. Or you can do it at the end.
Just give me a minute, please.
Yes, please. Okay. They can just let us know when they are done. Marguerite, if the technical team is okay, when they are done, they can just let us know so that we can move quickly.
Okay. It's perfect. You can go on.
Okay, thank you very much. And today, as we were saying, our webinar is on the online safety and the law. What they don't tell you and that really matters, and what really matters. So it is a 90-minute discussion, and the purpose of this webinar is basically to know some of the main concerns we are having with regard to the online safety and children, the digital divide and the digital fragmentation, and also to authoritarian regime, lack of personal security with regard to data stolen, data privacy, and data bullying, and finally, the misinformation, wrong information are out there, manipulation of thought and porn also is there. So that's the reason why we are having this great session. We are having 4 experts who will be joining this session, and the session will be divided into 2 parts. The first part, we are going to take the first 2 panelists, and the second part, we will be having also 2 panelists. Please, Magali, can you mute yourself? Okay. Yes. Okay, so without much ado, we are going to take the first panelist, and we would like to call on Eduarda Chacon Rosas from Brazil, who is going to do a delivery or presentation on the importance of privacy as a culture and how legal or regulation makes a difference. So she's an expert from Brazil, and she's going to enlighten us with regard to that topic. So Eduarda, if you can hear us, maybe you have the floor. in just 10 minutes, you can just tell us what you have prepared for the community as we are here. Thank you very much.
Hello, Christian and Magali and my colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm sharing my screen. Is everybody seeing it?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. As Christian said, I am Brazilian and I'm a lawyer. I work with data privacy and data protection for some time now and technology regulation. And today we are going to speak about the importance of regulation as to establishing privacy as a culture. And I'll talk about 10 minutes. And at the end of my presentation, I'll give my LinkedIn contact. So you may feel free to talk to me if you have any doubts and if you just need to know about it, Brazilian framework, something like that. So let's get started. The first things I would like us to think about is what's been happening to our society regarding personal data for some time now. So we have been spreading our personal data for decades. We give it to obtain like $1 discount for buying chocolates. We only recently started to worrying about this data dissemination. So for many years, since before social media, we have been giving personal data for buying stuff at stores, for using free email and free search mechanisms, because nowadays we know that nothing is for free. We have that very famous phrase that there's no such a thing as a free lunch. So this is very true regarding personal data too. So this data we have been spreading on even before internet is now used to as the brick. If we think of that data society as a building or as a city, we may say that the very bricks that are used to build the buildings, the streets, and everything that makes the city a city is personal data. So we must understand that we cannot actually take that data back and put it in a drawer. We must understand, and regulation must understand, that this data is already spread, and it will not, once Pandora box was open, it will not close again. So we cannot actually protect data in itself, because it's already spread in the deep web, in the regular internet, in physical and virtual databases everywhere. So even if we could locate part of our data in companies and services that we use, there are lots of data that is already we lost track of it. So what we really need to protect now is the data processing and not the data in itself, because informational self-determination, that the subject, the data subject rights to choose and to determine what will be done with his or her data is actually not so effective, because we have I think some of my colleagues will went through the concepts, but due to the time of the presentation, I will assume that we already know the basic concepts regarding data protection and privacy. So all of us are data subjects. We have our personal data, and that everything that concerns us as people, as natural people. So that kind of data that is spread in the internet and in the physical world, we cannot just recall it, because our power as data subject is limited. We must understand that there are legal reasons to justify the data that it's disseminated. There are contractual reasons, and even the legitimate interest of the controllers. Sometimes it cannot be just opposed to. So our right to oppose and to ask for the exclusion of data is actually limited. But our data concerned how, our rights concerning how that data is going to be processed, that is a stronger claim in legal terms. We can actually oppose to the data treatment as why are you using my personal data? How long you will need to keep it with yourself? So, are you listening to me? It's okay? Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, we are listening.
That kind of self-determination right, it concerning the processing of data instead of the data itself, is something that we could work toward the better regulation of it. I know that even if you're just talking about keeping data, just having the data it's already a processing of this data. But regarding the processing is an actual utilization of the data, we have better mechanisms to try to regulate it. And because of that, I asked what needs to be done and what could be done, what needs to change and what could change. So once Pandora Boxes is open, like I said, we must work towards a legal regulation that understands the fact that personal data cannot be returned to the full control of the data subjects because of those legal and regulatory and contractual and matter of fact circumstances. We have, especially in Brazil, I don't know, but I think it's everywhere, but Brazil has a very strong culture of fraud. And in this world of fraud and use of data, another data for third parties that are ill-intentioned, we actually cannot regain that kind of control of those data that are in the deep web or that are being bought for that are bought by those third parties, or even that are sold by the government. So what we must do, what we must focus on, is to teach and prepare the next generation to better value their privacy. Because even now, as we are talking about it, and Christian said, we must worry about child's safety on the internet. We have parents that from the first day of life of their son and daughters, they are already disseminating and spreading the data regarding their sons. So, and the culture that the children are being brought in is actually teaching them that it's okay to put themselves online, that it's okay to allow everybody to manipulate them and to tell them how the stereotypes they should what are the stereotypes they should focus in and try to fit in. So even if you think, wow, it's not a big deal that I am posting on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, but your routine in those social media allows people to understand what kind of person you are, your background, your habits, the kind of clothes you wear, the kind of language you use, and all of that is your personal data and can be used to profile you and to manipulate you. So we must understand first the gravity of what is happening, and we must teach and prepare the next generations to value their privacy in a way that we didn't learn, because we are a generation that that made the transition from analogic to digital. So we are kind of understanding it ourselves, the gravity, and as specialists, we hear that we are participating in this seminar. We already understand, but we are the minority. We are really nothing compared to the full of society, the 7 billion people in the world. So we must understand and teach even ourselves, and especially the next generations, that each click we make is a vote, is a decision, and that decisions matters. It matters in terms of disinformation and fake news, and matter regarding what stays online and what is canceled or what is just left behind. So it's really important that we understand that we live in a post-privacy era. Nowadays, what I understand that we can find something about almost everyone that is. If you Google the name of someone, you'll find something. If you search in public bases, you might find something. In Brazil, we have the suits, the legal suits. They are, by law, as a general rule, they are public. So I can just enter the court, the state court, and look for the name of someone, and then I'll find all the legal cases there are regarding this person, and I may learn his name, identity number, address, and if he has problems with the cable TV or the government. So we have really a huge number, a huge volume of data, and this data is actually I'm late, right? I only took 3 minutes. This data is actually important for the internet to work properly, because in artificial intelligence, for example, it works better if it has more data. That's why I said that the data is the brake for the internet and the data society. I would talk about neurotechnologies and neuro rights. That's in short words, it's my rights to be myself, my mind's rights and my identity rights, those kind of rights that are threatened by technologies that manipulate and make profile and try to dictate the way I live. So privacy needs to be protected because of its intrinsic value, and regulation must be seen as a behavioral science. So for the state and private actors, we must understand that there is the need of regulation, but we know that the state cannot always be in the same speed as technology. So we nowadays face the reality of auto-regulation, that the companies and the private actors trying to regulate themselves. And then we face the regulated auto-regulation. That's when the government or the authorities invested, like the DPAs, come and do validation of this auto-regulation the private actors have applied. So in regarding the user, the data subject perspective, I think that it's important that all of those kinds of regulation, auto-regulation, and regulated auto-regulation, that they must have as main values the the need of awareness, education, and prevention as to means of teach people and prepare people, the actual generations and the next generations, to understand the importance of their privacy and the importance of they being aware of the kind of data processing that it's being done with their personal data. So that's me. My LinkedIn here, and I guess it's also in the publicity material that was sent by the ISOC. So I like to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Magali. Thank you, Christian. And thank you, ISOC, and our chapter. And that's it. I hope it was clear, because I really tried to run the end. So how do I?
Yes, thank you very much, Rosas. We appreciate the presentation as well. Then, I recall that the presentation was about the importance of privacy as a culture and how regulation makes it a difference. Rosa presented us a lot of things with regard to the concern about the processing of data. She mentioned that we cannot fully control the data, but the processing of data is much important. And she also gave us some must do. We must train and we must teach and we must also learn because the gravity of the situation also is important, because data privacy is very, very much important. Thank you very much, Rosa, for your brilliant presentation. Moving on, we are now going to talk about the second presentation, which is going to focus on the internet governance and the digital right, you know, because we had it about what the regulation and what the regulation should do and what is the private and how they can also, what should we focus on? Now we are moving on looking at what the internet governance aspects and the digital right also is about the online safety. We are privileged to have in our midst our brother from Kenya, who is going to give us the talk. I think he's already there. And yes, Waihiga, you can just take the floor and you can introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me to switch off my video. Great. And you'll just give me a countdown once I begin. I appreciate. Is my presentation clear for you?
Yes, please. Very clear.
Okay, good. Beautiful. Okay, my name is Waihiga Muturi, serial social entrepreneur, accredited digital journalist, communications, and media expert. And what I'm interested about is how Africa tackles poverty using social enterprises. In view to that, I've done a number of things, some of which I'll share a slide so that you can get to look at it at your own time. But presently, and most exciting is working with Teleza Katiba in Kenya and other organizations around Humanity KE, also working with Know Your Rights Africa and organizations that protect LGBTQ, and that has been interesting so far. I've worked with a few companies here and there, and again, I will share this, but most proud of is working with companies like Digital Agenda for Tanzania Initiative by a friend called Peter Mbando, and HIL, which is the Hague Institute of Innovation and Law. And today I'm talking about internet governance and digital rights. I will just introduce the topic, go into it, the threats, audit management and plan, and what to do. So this is what came to mind, having done a peer research with individuals, that actors and institutions understand internet governance and digital rights. Now, the implementation so far has been better than before, and it's going well. But the general understanding of citizens in regard to internet governance and digital rights is next to minimal, if not as small as the gentleman there. Which behooves me, again, just to follow after Eduarda, onto awareness and then helping the citizens actually have an awareness of what is to be user-centric and human-centric. So I'll start with the definition quickly that internet governance, in other quarters also known as digital policy, one refers to the rules, policies, standards, and practices that coordinate and shape global cyberspace. But a simpler term where most citizens understand, and that's why a second definition just refers to the processes that impact how the internet is managed. Again, for all of you who know, the internet is a vast network, independently managed networks woven together by globally standardized data communication protocols, primarily internet protocols, TCP, UDP, DNS, and BGP. Now, if we get into the other terms, so I won't go into that much, but some of the topics that have come up because of this under internet governance have been cybersecurity, digital trade, free expression online, privacy and surveillance, Internet of Things, also known as IoT, IG institutions, which have come up and are trying to govern how things work, and then internet identifiers, and last but not least, the geopolitics of IG. We actually say that internet governance and not governance. So we don't say internet government, we say internet governance, because many issues in cyberspace are not and probably cannot be handled by the traditional territorial national institutions. Governance in this case implies to, how do I say it, a polycentric, less hierarchical order, which allows most people to contribute, and especially the citizens who are using it. As Eduarda said, the internet cannot be put back into a box. The actors and institutions in internet governance have so far been the private sector, civil society, technical standards and resource assignment organizations, intergovernmental organizations, internet multi-stakeholder forums, national government, the SARTs and SCRITs. For those who don't know what that is, you can actually review my presentation later. I'll allow that. And last but not least, the networked governance initiatives. The forms of internet governance, for better or worse, have been national, under national policies, is that it plays an important role in shaping internet. But the rise of cyberspace has produced and will continue to produce new institutions and governance. But in the list, IG, which also I call internet governance, involves complex mixture of all three governance structures, which include various forms of self-governance by market actors. So there are markets by themselves, the hierarchies, and then the networks by themselves. There's an internet governance timeline that you can view later and just get to see how the timeline has been and what has been happening throughout this phase. We move on to digital rights. As we talk about digital rights, I'll start with the most, for lack of a better word, most complicated one, that it refers broadly to human rights in the digital era and the rights that are implicated in access and use of internet and other ICTs. For our users, and mostly for the people who really need to understand and are not very vast in IG and digital rights, we say it refers to fundamental human rights in the digital environment. Because as they say, digital rights are actually human rights. But then again, you can't speak about digital rights without speaking about the responsibilities. As we talk about human rights, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, and has translated human rights into various forms, and it's some of the things digital rights has borrowed from. Meanwhile, the term technology by itself, especially shorthand version tech in recent decades, is often equated to digital technologies, frequently neglecting and undervaluing analog tech along with their interrelations. And just a simple exercise for all of you that you can do right now, please try typing in tech in your search, on your search engine, and see how the majority of results point to digital tech. Or sometimes it's the other way around, especially after feeling overwhelmed by decades of digital deluge. A common example is how vinyl records, for those who remember that time, and printed books are often romanticized as being more genuine and authentic than their digital counterparts. Of course, all these definitions are assumptions and are open to discussion. Now, when we talk about digital rights and the challenges, there are simple rights so far named as the 7. There are more. Everybody seemingly has their definition or is trying to come up with simple definitions of how to define that. Right to freedom of expression, information and communication, rights to privacy and data protection, right for your information actually to be forgotten from very many websites that you fill in, especially for those who, even when you're looking for employment, that's what happens. Or applying for something, you have to give some form of information. So where does that information go? And does that organization or individual have the right to keep that data forever? Right to protection of minors, that's a it's been a heavy item as we continue with the evolution of digital rights and internet governance. Right to credit for personal works, right to digital access, actually accessing the internet right now and being able to use your phone, accessing internet is seemingly being put as a human right. And that's the cases like Sierra Leone and Liberia and Libya, where the price of accessing internet has just gone up because the price of using telecommunication has also gone up. Right to our identity. Your identity online is your identity. How you define it is up to you. Challenges, limiting children's digital rights, and 2, social media interference. I won't go into that today, also because of time. Now, when it comes to digital responsibilities, here are the responsibilities. 1, responsibility to report bullying, harassing, sexting, or identity theft. Responsibility to cite works used for resources and researching, just like I've done in my presentation. At the end of it, or in some of the slides, I've actually cited where I got specific works. Responsibility to download music for those who use Spotify and the likes and friends, videos and other materials legally. Responsibility to model and teach student expectations and technology use. Responsibility to keep data and information safe from hackers. And from that one, you can borrow just from what Eduarda has just been talking about and the experience in Brazil. Responsibility not to falsify our identity in any way. And I say that also including Tinder and Bumblebee. For those who are fans of them, please do not falsify your identity. And that said, also I would like to mention Mozilla Foundation, which has been doing an amazing job in trying to do to manage responsible computer science, trying to understand morality and ethics within computer science and how we use internet and the space itself, the cyberspace. It's worth checking them out. You can find them in my notes. Last but not least, on the 4 spheres of digital rights, a lady called Yun Itan, a Vietnamese, but now participant from Malaysia, has been doing research on digital rights in a number of countries in Southeast Asia. She pointed out how some studies or documents on digital rights were chosen to expediently narrow down their scope to the top 2 or 3 rights. And thus, you can check out the spheres later because it is within her 2019 research paper. June is spelled Jun-E space TAN. That's her name. Again, digital rights need to be for all people. And last but not least, I would like to ask just by a show within the chat box, which of these rights mean something to you? I would like just to see that in the chat box. I would appreciate that. Which one means the most to you? Out of these rights that I've put here, which of the rights mean something to you? This was a presentation done by Digital Freedom Fund in December 2020, 10th December 2020, where the whole month they showed digital rights as human rights. Thank you. Nick Azaria, I see right to life. Thank you for that. Right to life also. Oh, whoa. Many people love the right to life. That's interesting. I appreciate that. Please feel free to mention more even as I continue, as I'm about to wrap up. Taking this from Freedom on the Net, and this is the apex of internet governance and digital rights, where they now meet together, where governance and the rights of maintaining a digital space have come in place, and you need to find a balance for both of them. In the high-stakes battle between states and technology companies, as all of you have seen, the rights of internet users have become the main casualties. This document was written actually by Adrian Shabazz and Ali Frank, just talking about the Freedom on the Net 2021. You can find that online. And the key findings of this document is that global internet freedom declined for the 11th consecutive year as we continued into the years. Then governments clashed with technology companies on users' rights. Sorry?
Can you just wrap up?
Yes, I'm wrapping up. And then last but not least, freedom of expression online is under unprecedented strain. Wrapping up, and thank you for that, sir. Wrapping up, so far there have been cases in the since 2020, there have been around an estimate of 498,300,000 cases of misuse of internet governance and infringement of digital rights. As I wrap up, and you can access my audit and management plan online, I would like to quickly go to the end of this. So what do we do and what needs to be done in regards to the apex of digital rights and internet governance? Number one, I would say decolonize digital rights and bridge gender apartheid. Genders need to have access to the internet, including having a feminist internet. Number two, we need to have capacity building, a public and private partnership. In Africa in 2021, only 33% of the population was using the internet, meaning an estimated 871 million people are not realizing digital dividends. And last but not least, partnerships defending day participation needs to happen. Organizations trying to tackle this are like APC, the Associated Progressive Communications Company, and many others who are trying to do a good work in trying to capacity build and partnerships. The trends will maintain: digital identity, cybersecurity, national cryptocurrencies, the rise of government techs and startups and their startups, elections in digital elections, AI and automation of public services, and last but not least, complexities in the morality and ethics of responsible computer science. Expect to hear that for the next 5 to 10 years as we even continue. And thus my resources, and this brings me to an end. I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wak, for your brilliant presentation. I think we like it very much. And the question also you asked to the participant, they have also provided a lot of details toward that. And we are now at the end of the first part, which means that we will give the floor to the participants. And I can see that from the chat, we are already having one question toward the last presentation, the last presenter. I will read. He says, "Work," which is referring to you. How do you think awareness How do you think awareness can be raised about the digital responsibilities you have listed in your presentation?
Okay.
Thank you. Just a few minutes you can just highlight.
No worries, no worries. Actually, my name is Waihiga, W-A-I-H-I-G-A, spelled, pronounced Waihiga. Thank you for that. Yes, it's okay. It's because I've seen also on the group it's written. Awareness, how can awareness actually be raised about the digital responsibilities you have listed in my presentation? I would put it as a general. Number one, and one of the first things I've said, it would mean we decolonize this. We decolonize the conversation around internet governance and digital rights. That's number one. A language needs to be used that the people can understand. And if you think about it, Africa and MENA are also seemingly the heaviest consuming continents of internet, to say the least. So the language that gets to the people needs to be decolonized in a form that they understand, in a form that the locals and grassroots and communities within actually understand what's being talked about. Number two is the involvement. I think I've already presented that as I was talking about it. How can we best involve the grassroots communities to come in and speak their truth, not the truth that's spoken out from outside, but speak the truth in relation to internet governance and how the policies around their countries, their specific countries, are handled, and how can the community also contribute to that. Having an organization and not picking on any specific, if I mention an organization, it would be unfair, but of the many organizations that are working on internet governance in Africa, for example, Africa and MENA, they need to have not only the face of Africans, but actually have the involvement of communities within the African communities they're targeting to speak a language that the people understand. And last but not least, it's a collaboration with telecommunication networks and private entities who, case in point, like, again, just like I mentioned, Sierra Leone, I think it's last month and this month, they just raised their tariffs on communication, which then means a reduction on the number of people who can access the internet via mobile, which is the major consumers use. How exactly would advocacy organizations actually go out and think of working with these organizations? I think it's about time people put themselves out there, joining organizations like the Africa Internet Rights and joining campaigns like what they have, the African Declaration on Internet Rights and Freedoms. Why aren't we pushing that? Why aren't we part of it? And I'll actually put, if I'm allowed to put it in my chat, in the chat, their link.
All right.
Yeah, I finished on that one, actually.
Yes, thank you very much. And I do believe the one who asked the question, Nati Brown, she's has been satisfied by your answer. And I mean, before we move to the next part, we have another question asked with regard to the first presenter to then they are asking, I have a question for Mrs. Eduarda. Please, do you have an idea or suggestion of law which can be created in order to encourage online privacy? So, Rosa, maybe you can quickly, in less than 2 minutes, give an answer to that, if you have an idea or a suggestion about law that can be created, or of course. Yes, thank you.
Yes, this question alone would be enough for a presentation of hours. But we have in Brazil, at least, and also in the European Union, we have the data privacy protection that really data privacy is seen as a way to ensure privacy. Like, privacy is my right to be left alone, and data protection is a tool, one of the tools that can be used to guarantee privacy or to help construct privacy. So good, strong data protection laws are important in order to ensure privacy. And the creation of a DPA, a data protection authority, is very important because it will regulate the data protection laws and help to enforce the privacy rules, the data privacy. I think it's very interesting that we have the expression that data privacy, that is like a combination of data protection and privacy. So it shows how those expressions, how those concepts are related to each other. And it's important that the constitution of the country also keeps privacy and data protection as a high value and an important guideline. So we have constitutional protection at first, up front, and then we have the data protection laws, and then we have the regulation from the DPA, the Data Protection Authorities, and it will produce guidelines, and it will talk with the society and talk with the companies to understand what's happening, what's wrong, and what's right. And the competence and the autonomy of the data protection authority is very important, because only this DPA has the knowledge and the access that are necessary in order to build good regulation that are based on the reality and not on the ideas only. Like if we are going to work with, oh, that's what I think and that's what I would like to be. It's beautiful, it's awesome, but it's not effective. So we have to work with the reality, what really happens, technology determinism, what cannot be made. We say that technology are zeros and ones, and the law, it's right and wrong. So both are binary understanding of things, and they must combine in order to have good laws and good framework. Not necessary laws; it can be regulations and framework and guidelines.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Rosa. For you said something very much important. You say we have to work with the realities, not only technology but also laws. Not only laws but also technology. So we like that. Thank you very much. Without much ado, allow me to move to introduce the next part of the meeting. We are going to have two brilliant other presentations. The first one is going to be given by Mrs. Antara Jha from India, and the latter one will be given by Jonathan Agbo from Nigeria. So without much ado, I would like to invite Mrs. Antara Jha from India, who is going to take us through the online app, its regulation and the governance. What is it? She's going to dive into it. So Antara, if you are there, probably you can take up the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And hello, everybody. Good evening. And thanks to all the organizers for conducting this webinar. As we all aware about that October is the month which is celebrated as the Cyber Security Month globally. So as my topic is online apps, its regulations and governance. The importance of mobile phones in our daily life and activities is undeniably unending. Next slide, please. Today, the availability of mobile apps is on increase such that it produced a noticeable change in the way humans feel and experience computing. As we all are aware that we are so much have that habit to use any online apps for ordering any foods or booking tickets. So online apps is something which of which we are habitual day by day. We became habitual day by day. But we can't deny that there are some disadvantages such as back please. There are some disadvantages such as online criminals, cyber frauds, etc. Now, what exactly online apps is? This is an application to run on a phone, tablet, or watch. These online apps are convenient, can save money. One can be more efficient by using these online apps. One can access information and programs on one move. Now, next slide, please. What is online gaming? It is an electronic game playing over a computer network, particularly over the internet. Examples are there like Dream 11, Rummy, Poker, etc. Next slide, please. Now there is a question whether online gaming can be considered as game of chance or game of skill. If it is considered as game of skill, it means it is based mainly on the mental or physical level of expertise of a player rather than a chance. One of the most significant benefits of a game of skill is that it provides freedom to the players to explore their capabilities in the sport. It is the individual skills that determine the success rate. For example, chess, carom, rummy, fantasy sports, and etc. Now, what is game of skill? It is the usage of skill which is present, but a higher level of chance determines success. Games like playing cards, roulette, rolling dice, or even picking a numbered ball are reflected upon as chance-based games. Next slide, please. Now, these are the legal framework in conducting online apps in different countries. In Canada, till date, as per the criminal code, hosting a gambling website is deemed as illegal. The matter of legalizing online gambling operation with its own confines is left to provinces. In the USA, at a federal level, gambling, inclusive of online, is legal, but each state has a different position on the legality of online gambling. An important law in this regard is the Unlawful Internet Gambling Act. This law doesn't prohibit players from playing games. However, the intention of the law was to stop money laundering. In the UK, the basic legislation that applies to gambling of all forms is the Gambling Act 2005. It is legal for residents and visitors and is regulated by the United Kingdom Gambling Commission. In India, each place has different position on the legality of online gaming. Here, Online Gaming Regulation Bill 2022 was introduced. According to this bill, Section 2E defines online gaming as games played on any electronic device. This bill proposes to establish an online gaming commission constituted by the central government. The need of R is regulation of real money gaming because of its increasing popularity and risk of increase in illegal transactions. Next slide, please. Now, there is a question that is money laundering through online gaming possible? Yes, it is possible. The online game industry has become one of the ways of money laundering. Even if it's not true of every game, but certain games offers in-game items that may be brought. Players they purchase these resources with real money. Users input their credit cards details into the system while playing in-game purchases in online games. So we can say that the money laundering can be done through this online gaming. The absence of laws in the online gaming industry to stop money laundering makes this sector appealing to criminals. In the law gaming industry, money laundering has become more accessible because of a lack of customer identification and due diligence. Virtually no monitoring of financial activities, and we can say that there is a lack of reports such as suspicious activity reports. There are some elements that ought to be covered under the laws of any country. First, we can say that there should be establishment of a licensing system with a separate regulator who would either give operating permits or just register qualified operators. Second, we can say that provide games of skill, games of chance, casual games, and related operations a clear and standard definition, meaning, and range, as well as identifying their permitted users requirements. The other point which we can say that should be included under the law that directions on how to implement due diligence measures such as responsible play standards, accessibility, know your customer requirements, privacy and security. Other points which we can mention in this under this point, that mechanisms to guarantee safe and indestructible gaming platforms as well as technological transparency audit should be there. Children's safety and age verification procedures shall be maintained, keeping track of transactions, information for transparency, putting a limit on purpose of utilizing involving real money on the end of given given time frame. So these are some of the points which should be strictly maintained by the concerned country for taking laws to avoid money laundering through online gaming. There are next, please. The taxation must be also clarified that while playing this online gaming, what tax player needs to pay for that moment. There are, next slide, please. Now, these are some conventions, conferences, organizations on cybercrime. As we all are aware about Budapest Convention, it is largely recognized as the most relevant international treaty on cybercrime. This convention covers areas like illegal access, illegal interception, data interference, system interference, online fraud, and etc. After 2012, the Cybercrime Convention Committee conducted 3 rounds of assessments on the effective implementation of the following articles of the convention. First was the preventive measures under this articles 16, 17, 29, 30 can be included. The second point is international cooperation under this Article 31 with reference to Articles 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 35 are included. And the sanctions and measures, which is mentioned under 13 of the Cybercrime Convention Committee of Budapest Convention. Next is Octopus Conference. It is a regular event held every 12 to 18 months by the Council of Europe. It constitutes one of the biggest platforms for exchange in the area of cybercrime. Next is Interpol. Interpol, its full form is International Criminal Police Organization. This provides investigative support, expertise, and training to law enforcement, focusing on 3 major areas of transnational crime, that is terrorism, cybercrime, and organized crime. As we all know that its headquarters is in France. Next is Organization of the American States. Its purpose is to strengthen peace and security in the hemisphere, promote representative democracy, ensure the peaceful settlement of disputes among disputes among members, provide for common action in the event of aggression, and promote economic, social, and cultural development. Next convention we can say is PILON, that is Pacific Island Law Officers Network. It is a network of senior law officers from 19 Pacific Island countries, including Australia, New Zealand. PILON's that is Pacific Island Law Officers Network, current strategic plan is to identify corruption, cybercrime, and sexual and gender-based violence. The pilot secretariat is based in Samoa. Next is UN Treaty on Cybercrime. The UN is currently negotiating a major cybercrime convention that has the potential to reshape international criminal law. To coordinate the new convention, the UN General Assembly passed resolution in December 2019 and established we can say ad hoc intergovernmental committee to elaborate a comprehensive international convention on countering the use of information and communication technologies for criminal purpose. The last, World Bank. This is for combating cybercrime, which is a priority, particularly for emerging economies. Last, next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation, which covers a lot, you know. You mentioned about, you spoke about transparency in order to avoid money laundering. You gave an example of some of the framework in the other country. Right? You also specified the taxation, which should be clarified by all the member states so that every people who are using the online app, especially the games players, they should also be aware of. We also mentioned the convention. You list a lot of them. The convention on cybercrime. Yes, I think the participants are very much grateful for this important presentation as well. So we say thank you very much. Probably we'll be coming back to you in a while with some of the questions. Last but not the least, we will jump directly to the last presentation, last input is going to be given by our brother from Nigeria. Jonathan Agbo from Nigeria is going to present on the maintaining data integrity through effective regulatory policy. You know, I think it should be linked to the previous presentation as well. So, Mr. Jonathan, if you can hear me, you will have the floor.
Thank you, Christian. I can hear you clearly. Thank you, every other participant who has joined. My name is Jonathan Agbo. A short introduction of myself. I am a digital rights advocate. I'm a lawyer by training. If you're familiar with the Nigerian legal practice space, we hardly have specializations, but my niche areas are policy advocacy in the areas of digital rights generally and drug law policies. I mean, those are areas where my advocacy focus on. And then my private practice focus on intellectual property, debt recovery, election petitions, and commercial litigation. So in a couple of minutes, I'll be speaking to this topic, maintaining data integrity through effective regulatory policies. As a start, it is important to understand what data integrity is. I would be sharing the slides now as I go. So what is data integrity? It simply means the overall accuracy, completeness, consistency, and completeness of data with regulation. Basic terms, we all have different modes of creating data. So the requirement of data and also include that overall it is accurate its life cycle. So it means that once a set of commands Sorry, I had some network issues. So I was saying that I just joined back. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay,
We lost for a couple of minutes.
I'll be sharing the slides again. I had network issues. Okay, so I was saying that when to comply with the requirement of data integrity, it must be complete, it must be accurate, and it must be consistent throughout its life cycle. So what this means is that the database is relatable no matter how long it is stored or accessed. And there are different types of data integrity. There's the physical data integrity. And in simple language, what it means is that the method through which the accuracy of data is stored and assessed is kept intact. And then logical data integrity means the accuracy and consistency of the data itself. So data makes sense in the context in which it is developed. Now, there are differences between data security, data quality, and data integrity. The best way to explain this is that data integrity encompasses both data security and data quality. So data security refers to the steps or measures that we take to prevent data from being breached or corrupted. And I have a couple of examples. For instance, you can develop a set of commands that restrict access to third parties, building firewalls, or encryptions. And these are measures that one can take to protect information or data from being accessed by third parties who do not have the authority to do so. On the other hand, data quality means that a set of requirements or standards needed to perform operations or certain tasks are complied with. And like I noted on the slide, it is an aspect of data integrity. Then data quality, okay, is what I have just explained. So these two put together add to the earlier definition of data integrity is what data integrity means in a sense. So it means that overall, data is safe, it is accurate, it is complete, and it meets the required operational standard throughout its cycle. Now, across the world, there are different legislation that regulate data integrity. All the speakers who have spoken so far have one way or the other mentioned data protection laws across the world. When Rosa was making her presentation, she mentioned specific legislation in Brazil that regulate data protection of data subjects. In the EU, the law that regulates data protection is the General Data Protection Regulation of 2018. And basic features of that regulation is that it governs the processing of personal data of data subjects within the EU and also applies to all EU states and foreign jurisdictions. Again, as long as the data subject is in the EU, the regulation applies even if the data processor is outside of the EU. What this means is that if, for instance, an ISP in Nigeria, say MTN, it's the most popular network that we use in this country, is interested in processing the data of a subject. And when I say data subject, like Rosa also explained, for the benefit of our participants, it simply means individuals. So if, for instance, an ISP in Nigeria intends to process the data of another person or an individual in, say, Holland or Portugal, that is part of the EU, it will have to comply with the General Data Protection Regulation, otherwise it can face sanctions. So the GDPR lays out rules that obligate organizations to create better data protection policies and holds them accountable for failure. So I have itemized some of the notable provisions or articles in the GDPR that applies across board. I'll come to this in a short while. But the first very important article is Article 6 that deals with lawfulness of processing. So it provides that data processing is lawful only if the subject has given consent. So that's the first requirement, that the data subject must have given his consent for his or her data to be processed, and then the processing is necessary for performance of a contract that concerns the data subject, or it is done in compliance with regulatory obligations, or to protect the data subject interest, perform public interest tasks, or pursuance of data controllers' legitimate interest. So the simplest explanation of this is that you cannot process a third party's data unless that person has given you his or her consent for the data to be processed. That's one of the requirements that makes it lawful. Or you have a contractual obligation with a third party, and it is important or necessary for you to process that third party's data for the performance of that contract. Another situation is if you have an obligation under the law, maybe a national law, to process a data in compliance with a regulatory obligation. Then, if you have to protect the interests of the data subject or to perform a public interest task, or where you are doing it in order to protect your own legitimate interest. So those are the situations that make processing of data lawful under the GDPR. And it is important to note that for the last requirement, that is protecting a data controller's legitimate interest, is subject to the requirement that it must not conflict with fundamental freedoms and rights of other persons, or it does not apply if the data subject is a child. Now, Article 7 defines what constitutes consent, and the elements include that it should be specific. So you don't just ask for consent in nebulous terms. It has to be very specific. What do you want to use the data for? What are you processing the information for? How long are you going to use the information? How do you intend to discard it? A couple of speakers who have presented before me have made the point that once you give consent for your information to be processed, you can never have it back. However, the GDPR makes provisions in certain cases that you can ask for your data to be deleted. So what it means is that it can be deleted from the database, but it does not mean that the data controller will not be able to have access to it in the long run, if should they do so. I mean, should they choose to, except that under the law, if they do that, they'll be subject or subjected to sanctions. Now, Article 9 prohibits the processing of certain categories of data. It is called special information. So such data as race, tribe, religious opinion, membership of trade unions, political beliefs, genetic data or biodata, if the purpose is for uniquely identifying a natural person, his or her health information, sexual orientation, or sex life. So that article prevents profiling or data that's another language to use. So you cannot profile people on the basis of their sexual orientation, cannot profile them on the basis of their religious beliefs, on the basis of their sex life, or even their health information. You can't do so. In essence, it protects people within the EU from racial profiling, for instance, or other kinds of profiling. But it also has exceptions, and the exception is that the data subject can agree that such specific information be processed, or where it is necessary to comply with national employment obligations. So we have situations where for certain kinds of employment, you must give particular information about yourself. You might even be required to conduct certain tests. For instance, in Nigeria, for example, certain companies would require that you conduct HIV tests. And the essence generally is for them to be able to take measures that will prevent spread. And that's an obligation under the law. So that is an exception. Or where the obligation arises for the data controller to protect the interests of the data subject or that of a third party. So those are lawful exceptions to prohibiting certain categories of data under the GDPR. And then Article 11 protects confidentiality and anonymity of data. So what it means is that you cannot process data in a way that identifies a particular data subject unless both of you already have an understanding that that is the purpose for processing the data in the first place. So what I've done again is to look at some other articles. I mean, the GDPR is generally divided into chapters. So each chapter has these articles, 99 of them. So articles 12 to 23 contains the right of data subject, and they include the right to information about his rights. What this means generally is that the GDPR makes provisions that a data subject must be informed about his rights. So for instance, in the event of a violation of his privacy, in the event that the purpose for which the data is being processed is unlawful, he has rights. And what are those rights? He has a right to be informed of the steps he can take to protect himself or to seek remedies. He also has the right to be informed of the modalities for enforcement of his rights. And then where his data is processed through a third party, he has the right to also be informed. And he also has the right to be to have access to information about how his data is processed. And then there's a right to be forgotten. That is the right to request that your data be erased. So we've had cases, I mean, cross-border decisions of the European Court of Human Rights, for example, Spanish courts, and even in Nigeria, where this provision has been interpreted in different circumstances. For instance, in Nigeria, it has been decided in a case that an individual instituted against Google that the right to erasure is not permanent and that it is subject to certain conditions. And then the GDPR also makes provision for transfer of data to foreign country. It says that it can only be done if that country, I mean, this is just one of the requirements, that if that country has enough adequate protection mechanisms. And one of the things that the data controller must put into consideration is the country's record of respect for rule of law and fundamental freedoms. And that this is where African countries come under the spotlight a lot of times. We have a tendency to pander towards authoritarianism. So we are always under the scrutiny when it comes to data protection. Now, in Nigeria, what operates currently is the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation 2019. And it is almost a word-for-word copy of the General Data Protection Regulation of the EU. The provisions of that regulation applies to all persons resident in Nigeria, whether they are citizens or not. And it also applies to Nigerians living abroad. And just like the GDPR, it provides that data processing is lawful only if it is for lawful purpose and it is done with the consent of the data subject. And then it says consent must be obtained voluntarily. And so such things as fraud, coercion, undue influence, and other vitiating elements can actually vitiate consent. For instance, it imposes an obligation that the data controller must demonstrate that the data subject has the capacity to give consent. And then it imposes obligation on data controllers to ensure the security of data. And just like the GDPR, it also regulates international transfer of data and is similar in form and content with just very little modifications to the GDPR. Now, Ghana also has the Data Protection Act 2012. And Section 18 of that act says that processing must be lawful, must be reasonable, and it must not infringe the privacy rights of data subject. And then it says that the processing of a foreign data subject, sorry, I spelled it as foregone. Foreign data subject must be in compliance with the legislation of that foreign country. And then Section 19 specifically states that the purpose for which data is being processed must be relevant, must be necessary, and it must not be excessive. So these are some laws that regulate data protection across countries. One thing to note about these regulations is that they have cross-border applications. For instance, the GDPR can be enforced in Nigeria if it is done in respect of an EU citizen or somebody resident within the EU. And like the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation also provides, the NDPR, the provisions of the NDPR will apply to Nigerians living in any other country of the world. So most data protection laws have that cross-border influence element. It means that you can live in another country and insist that your data be processed according to the law of your own country. So that's what these laws have in common. Africa as a continent is not doing so well in regards to data protection regulations. So far, we have less than 24 countries that have active legislation on data protection. Some countries have passed their laws, but are not being enforced at the moment. Others don't even have at all. And so when it comes to data protection or the protection of the integrity of data, you have to make reference to constitutional provisions or other criminal laws that make some kind of reference to data. But generally, they don't have comprehensive laws that regulate data protection, which is not very good enough. Now, the sanctions under the GDPR and most of these regulations that we have talked about is mostly fines.
Hey, Jonathan.
Sorry?
Jonathan? Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. What you're saying is very interesting, but maybe we are already running late. Maybe.
Okay, so let me round off. Let me just round off. So
thank you.
The sanctions that apply to data protection violation is majorly fines. I have given examples of some of the fines that have been imposed on data controllers. And then the threats that can occur with regards to the integrity of data can come in three ways: human errors, security breaches, or hardware or software malfunction. And when this happens, the steps that can be taken, which one of them that is most important is to have a robust data governance. Many organizations don't have a data governance policy, and that leads to weakness or threats occurring in regards to the data of data subjects. And then, so there's need to have a robust data governance policy. It's also important to have a constant security update, a data recovery procedure, and people should be aware that they have the right to seek legal redress for a violation of the integrity of their data. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan. So sorry again to interrupt you at the latter part of your presentation. It was very interesting. Thank you very much for enlightening us on the EU GDPR and also giving us a branch of what is going on in Nigeria and Ghana as well with regard to data protection. So with this, we would like to tell you that we are done with the presentation, and now we are moving to the latter part of the session, which is going to be the Q&A. And we would also like to apologize because we are requesting 10 minutes more so that we can delve into the conversation. Yes, Magali, I saw your hands up. Maybe you wanted to say something.
No, I was just clapping.
Oh, okay. So you wanted us to clap for everybody. Thank you very much. So now we are opening the floor for a deeper conversation. We have heard our panelists from the first one, Eduarda, to Jonathan, talking about the digital right and the online safety, the internet governance, and the gender. So now we would like to open the floor for a general contribution. Maybe in case you have a question or contribution, you can just raise your hands. I think at the bottom right of your screen, you can see where you can raise your hand. But if you cannot, just request the floor from the chat, then we'll give you the floor. Okay, I think we have a question from Irina. It is toward Antara. Antara, it says, what is privacy preserving technology? What is a privacy preserving technology that can be used to verify the age of children online? That's a question asked by Irina. Maybe, Antara, you would like to go for?
Yes, thank you for the question. I was saying that if any laws made for online gaming, which says that money laundering is taking place, in that situation, what I feel that there should be some laws which stricts the age of the children that they should go for online gaming or not. This is what I need.
Okay. We also have another question. I think that one was asked to, was given by Yanda Umar. He said, I agree, merging country specific internet governance laws with universal best practices laws in one step in ensuring that our rights are upheld. My concern were also around ensuring that vital information is cascaded down to the grassroots level. Yes, simplifying communication is one way. I see a challenge in getting this down to the local sales village level and merging trends like mis and disinformation, which has been on the increase with the fast penetration of technology. I think the question, the reflection was also based on the second presentation by Waihiga, whereby Yanda Umar also intervened. I don't know if Yanda is still there. Maybe you can take the floor and try to go a little bit further with that. Yanda?
You mean Linda, the question she asked?
Yes, please.
Okay. Linda was actually, I can share what she shared if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, I think it was even with regard to what you said earlier.
Yes, she was saying, I agree that we should merge country-specific internet governance laws with universal best practice laws. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I was just agreeing with her because the truth is the work is really on us, the people who claim to know internet governance and to understand policies, and the people who are also managing digital rights. Again, just as I say, digital rights are human rights, and it's an apex that can't be separated. Internet governance and digital rights cannot be separated. So we need to be at a place where we communicate. And thank God I'm a journalist. So for me, sense dictates that we need to communicate and put media that directly speaks to the masses on the ground. We need to speak to the mass, not the educated only, and the people who are controlling the space. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Speak to the mass, as it was also mentioned during the presentation. I have,
actually,
from my
sorry,
side.
Sorry to
yes.
add on to, if I'm sorry, just to add on to that. If we don't speak to the mass, then there's no change, because governments will continue trying to institutionalize the internet and the cyberspace as a whole. If we don't get the mass in it, then even activism cannot happen. So we really need to be keen. I'm currently working with Iran on not the country, a movement there on the Misa scenario, the lady who was killed in Iran, and the government is really doing its best to control that. So we need to really communicate to the people who are the serious and key stakeholders of the internet. It's not the government, it's actually the people, us, me and you. Okay, but even remove us, because maybe we're even in academia, but the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As Antara was mentioning, she said we should work with the realities, the tech and the laws. I think that is the significance of your input. I have 2 questions from my side. Then maybe we are still reminding participants that in case you have a question, you can just raise your hands and you can contribute. Question or contribution are welcome. My question goes to, one question goes to Antara and the other one goes to Jonathan. From Antara, she gave us a couple of convention and framework on cybercrime, and I would like to know, among them, what has been the implementation across board, since we are still seeing that the cybercrime or the cybercriminality is still on the rise, especially with the COVID amidst. I mean, what has been done to prevent those things with regard to those the conventions you mentioned? Maybe she can speak from the Indian perspective or also another one. And for the question toward Jonathan, you mentioned during your delivery, you presented the GDPR, the EU and its impact on the citizen. And you give us a little clue of in Nigeria and probably in Ghana. I would like to know, with compared to the EU, the GDPR in Africa, what do we have as comparison, and how is it enforced or applied into, for instance, Nigeria as a whole, about the Nigeria and maybe probably other countries, as you mentioned, with their national act? How do these things comply if we have? Thank you. Yes.
Can I?
Yes, please.
So, can you please repeat the question?
Yes, my question was about the. During your presentation, you mentioned some of the convention, the Budapest Convention, the Interpol, maybe the World Bank, and so forth. I was asking among them, what has been the implementation across board, since we are seeing that cybercrime is on the rise, yes, basically that is the question.
As I mentioned about Budapest Convention, which is largely recognized as the most relevant international treaty on cybercrime. So it is it is still existing. We all are totally dependent on Budapest Convention because it's a global convention which I think it should be followed by every country. It is one of the largest recognized, international treaty which works on cybercrime issues. And as I mentioned, that it covers different areas which is related to, illegal access, illegal interception, data interference, and many more. And apart from that, yes, I do think that these all are in the process. But day by day, what I feel that cyberspace, on the platform of cyberspace, we are facing different kinds of challenges and crimes, a new version of crimes are committed on this platform. So what I think that yes, there are these conventions, but the thing is that we need to, update these conventions according to the crime so that we can curb the problems, the crimes related to cyber.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for the answer. Last but not the least, we are having another question on the chat asked by Joseph Rutherford. He's asking, what role will Web3, World Web and blockchain play in online safety and law? Maybe any of the panelists would like to take up the question and probably enlighten it. The role the web, WWW and the blockchain plays in the online safety and law. Jonathan, or maybe Waihiga, or Antara, or even Rosa, if you can try to give a little clue of what, to answer the question. And there is another question by Brown to the part. He is asking to the panel, to all the panelists, what can we do as a collective to challenge our policymakers and government leaders that will make them take the interest and participate in forum such as this one we are having? Yes.
Sorry, Christian. Is it for me to answer?
Yeah. It is a question to all the panelists. I mean, yeah, you can go ahead.
It's a it's a hard question because it's such a challenge. I think we would need to involve actual stakeholders, like people from those authorities, those DPAs, and people from government, and for companies, we would have to ask them to participate as guests, or try to give them a way to promote their company, something that would be beyond the academic interest, the professional interest. They would have to gain something from it, I guess, or even if it's a chance to be in public and speak and talk about themselves or the work they do. That's what I think.
Yes, okay. And maybe another panelist would like to take the floor and give us and say some.
Yeah, the role Web3 and blockchain.
Yes, please, probably.
I think the value of Web3 and blockchain as a whole is that it's decentralized, and it gives the system of freedom. But at the end of the day, there is keen interest. I think, actually, just to answer that directly, the Web3 and blockchain, what role they play in online safety is actually, to me, and this is just my opinion, is actually push for for protectors. It will push in for more protectors, because for those who know or don't know, Web3 and blockchain applications come, with it comes the rise of real digital economy that should boost worldwide GDP. And it's very good for Africa, for example, because now it decentralizes that. So when you think about both of them, especially for the finance sector, it's really key to see that this will help currency run in a less decentralized and less controlled way. Pushing for legal protectors, I think it's a beauty. It's not even a catch-22. It's a beauty about it, because now it has to make us level up, that when we are talking about laws, when we are talking about rights, we are very clear that, oh, yes, we want these rights, freedom of access, etc., but at the same time, we are willing and able to protect to a certain level information, data, etc., of individuals who participate. If fortunately or unfortunately, this is a public forum, what I wanted to say, it helps us, people within the internet governance and digital rights space, to actually cut our ish, to cut our crap. Because now we have to be honest enough to really do what we say we are doing, because we can't stop Web3 and blockchain because it's helpful, but also it needs some sort of, the users need some sort of protection. So how do we do that? And so we need to rise up. Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Waihiga, for the need to rise up. So I think most of the things that have been said by you guys and also on the chat. So we would like to say very big thank you to all of you who have dedicated their time to really contribute and participate to the question. And we would like also to remind all of us that this is only the first webinar, and we are still having 2 or 3 more webinars coming. And we will also share in the chat the email of the online safety SIG group, SIG, so you can also join. And all of the social network accounts as well. I mean, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Maybe Magali will do that at the appropriate time. And she will also invite you to register as a member to the online safety SIG if you are not yet a member. So without much ado, I will again call on all the participants to switch on their camera so we can take another group photo. I can see your hands up. Probably, Waihiga, you want to say something again?
Yes, I wanted to say something. Actually, to a question, I don't know if we covered it. Nathir Brown has asked, what can we do as a collective to challenge our policymakers and government leaders that would make them take interest and participate in forums such as this? Was that answered?
Yes, Antara gave something, but you can also in 1 minute just say something.
Okay, time me. Thank you. I think we need to call them. We need to call them at the promises they've made. If you think about it, like for example, AGF 2022, the president of Republic of Malawi, Lazarus Chakwera, actually stated that his government attached high priority to digitalization. We need to call Malawi out on that. The other person who actually mentioned something again also because of MTN and Telcom and Safaricom, which are in Kenya. If you think about Liquid Telecom also, there are a number of people who have made promises. Even the African Union Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy, Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, underlined the need for Africa to devise, how did he say, devise ways to keep pace with increasing demand for digital infrastructure, bridging connectivity gaps, especially in the urban rural areas. So we need to call them out. To call them out involves a lot of policy and advocacy, a lot of how do I say this? Partnership with stakeholders, and especially public-private stakeholders, because now they will be like, okay, we need to be in this space. And then number 3, which actually would be the umbrella, learn how to communicate. I'm a communications and media professional for the last 10 years, and that's the one thing I still see within government. We are unable to communicate. So let's communicate directly and communicate properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Communicate directly and communicate properly, especially with the government agency and entity. Thank you very much, Waihiga. You have been very helpful for the webinar. And we would like also to say a very big thank you to all the panelists who have contributed from India, from Brazil, from Nigeria, from Kenya, and my co-moderator, Suun, who is also on the line. If she's there, if you can understand, if you can hear us, maybe you can say hi on the chat, on the call, so that people can know that you are there. And without much ado, I will give back the floor to Magali, the chair of the Online Safety SIG, so she can conclude the meeting. Thank you. Magali? Magali?
Yes.
Yes, you have the floor. Thank you.
First, I would like to apologize all of you for your participation. I know that your time is precious and you are very respectful. So really, again, thank you very much. A special thanks go to the 4 speakers, Mrs. Eduarda, Mrs. Antara, Sir Waitai, and Sir Jonathan Agbo. Without you, this webinar would not have been possible. Again, thank you very much. I hope that you enjoy this moment and that you learn a lot about the online safety and the law, and that now it's there you are more able to protect yourself when you go on the internet. And also a big thank you to the moderator, Mr. Christian D. Thank you very much again. Thank you. This was really the last word. Please, Mr. Christian.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything